All right, Jerry, we're ready.
Daniel.
Well, hello there, well-dressed sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where'd you get that chair from?
Oh, this chair?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was a little gift to myself to celebrate the release of our album on iTunes this week.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. I guess. How did you afford that?
Well, it's all part of our corporate tax structure. I was able to write it off and purchase these nice new shiny things for myself.
What do you mean corporate tax structure?
Well, you know, write-offs, spending, stockholders.
Spending what? We hardly make anything from Boardgasm.
No.
In fact, I don't know if we've made anything, period, from Boardgasm.
No, that's the illusion. Really, we're worth millions on paper. Let me. Here is a breakdown of our current corporate tax
Where did you get this
structure.
from?
I've always had this.
You just had this ready and waiting.
Yeah, of course.
If we ever had this
I
conversation.
constantly reference this.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so yeah, you can see here. Obviously, at the top we've got Board God, which some people refer to by Gary Gygax, but it's the same general principle. Then below that, of course, we've got Monsanto, and Tom Vassell splits off. A dog in a fancy suit. That would be my direct boss. Under which there I am, and here you are underneath me, tied with my camera equipment. And then there's.
Why am I underneath you?
Well, it's for technical purposes. It's neither here nor there. I'm technically president of Boardgasm, and you are the vice president.
I'm the vice president.
Yes, and right here would be our camera. Of course, over here we've got the subsidiaries of Boardgasm and the other branches off. The Board Games with Scott Designs, distributors, you know, so forth and so on. And down here, of course, we've got beer and board games. So yeah, knowledge of this allows me to be able to harvest our current assets against the loan schedule, which then allows us to borrow equity in the form of a lot of times stock, which we've sold to the highest bidder, making me quite a bit of money.
You made quite a bit of money.
Well, on paper.
And why haven't I seen any of this money?
Well, that's because as the president, I have overarching privilege.
How do you have overarching privilege? I'm 50% of Boardgasm.
Well,
And I'm way more deserving of a title that is much higher than your camera.
I would say it's 30% max. Besides, and anybody can be replaced in Boardgasm. Just keep that in mind. Anybody can be replaced.
Oh, bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't do these without me.
Oh, can't I?
Jerry, I think we're ready to play.
Hey there, Dan.
How you doing?
Good.
You have a better chair than me.
Yeah. It's with the release of the new Boardgasm album on iTunes, I figured it was about time that I started treating myself.
Well, that sounds fair.
Yeah. So, you want to play some stocks and bonds?
Let's do it. Stocks and Bonds is a game for 2 to 6 players.
You son of a bitch! I want my shirt back! Stocks and Bonds is a game for 2 to 6 players. However, you can play with more if you really wanted to try. At the start of the game, everyone's going to be given a pad to record all of the transactions they'll make through the game on, as well as a handy sheet that's labeled Stocks and Bonds Securities Review. This gives you a basic layover of the companies that you'll be investing in over the course of the game. Everyone starts off with a set amount of money. We have various corporations that hilariously represent corporations that were either bigger or smaller depending on when the game came out, which was actually in the 60s. And their values will fluctuate over the course of the game depending on how it appeared they were going in the 60s. For instance, like there's a company that obviously represents the American auto industry, and in the game it's labeled as It has a possibility for stable growth, but we're not really sure about the future. So I guess that's how they looked at it in the 60s. You're given an amount of money. Now, you don't actually have cash in this game. Instead, you just keep track of your money on your score pad. And then for 10 separate rounds in the game, you'll take a set amount of money and you'll actually invest in the companies. And when you invest, you actually take stock certificates that represent certain amounts of shares. Each company has a little bit of a difference to it. They are listed in the securities and review sheet by how likely it is that they're going to make money. Like, some will almost always make you money, but they'll just make you a little bit. Some will fluctuate up and down, left and right, and you don't know exactly how it's going to do it. Like, there's an oil company in this that could give you incredibly high returns, but also has a very high potential to bomb completely. Once you've picked a set amount to invest in, you take the shares, put them in front of you so everyone sees what you have. You'll record the amount you paid for each of them on the score pad, so that way you know how much money you have left. And then once everyone's done that, whoever's turn it is, they are going to actually draw a card from the deck, and that will do two things. First off, it will tell you whether it's going to be a bear or a bull market. And then beneath it, something will happen, and it's completely random. Like, some company may go up, some company may go down, some company the shares may split even before they should. Once that's been determined, you then pick up this handy-dandy calculator that came with the game, and you will roll 2 dice, and depending on what you roll, you'll move the marker, and then look, and it'll list all the companies here, and if it gives a black number next to it, that's how much the company has gained. If it gives a red number next to it, that's how much it's actually lost. Now, this may seem completely random, and it technically is if you look at it, in that everything is based on a die roll, but the descriptions that you were given at the start of the game are pretty accurate. Most of the time, a company is the way it's described, that is what it will do in the game. So, like, Growth Corp is a well-established company with a phenomenal growth record, but a very, very low yield. So growth will actually slowly grow, 99% of the time in-game, but it won't grow very fast. Whereas the oil company I mentioned, which in this game is called Stryker Drilling, represents extremely speculative investment. Profits go towards drilling new oil wells, so no dividends are expected. This stock could be worth rags or riches. And Stryker, if you ever actually just look through here, Stryker just fluctuates like a mother. It just goes up and down, left and right. But at the same time, I mean, if you invest on it on those times when it goes up, you can make a lot of money quickly, but then you could lose it all in one turn. Once the new scores have been figured out, or rather the new stock prices I should say, you actually then will record them on here, and this will be on display for the entirety of the game, so that way people can see, this is how much stocks are now. Or, oh, I see that this thing has just been slowly going down and down and down all game. You know what? I'm going to avoid that. Based on what the new stock prices are, everyone, looks at the board and sees, looks at their own score pad and sees, I bought it for this much, and it's worth this much now, so I've made this much money. And then you can choose, you can stick with what you have, or you could possibly sell stock for their new price, hopefully higher, but many times lower, and then invest in different stocks over the course of the game. Some stocks do give you yields, and the yield will just be however many stocks you have each round. You'll make that much, and it's not a lot, but it's a little bit that can help you along. Plus, if you invest like a lot in a particular company that does have a yield, I mean, yeah, it's not a lot for one share, but if you have 100 shares, like 100 times 40, bam, you're making 400,000 per turn. So that is something to bear in mind. Usually yields won't determine the game itself, but if you get enough yields to possibly invest in a company that can make you a lot down the road, it's not a bad idea. After 10 rounds, everyone gets one final closing round in which it's like, alright, no yields will be made this round, you won't be able to sell at the end. Instead, make your final purchases now, and we will roll the dice, go to the calculator, see what the new prices are. Those are set in stone. Everyone looks at any shares they may have in front of them, adds up the total amount that they've made. Hopefully it's more than what you started with, and whoever has the most money is the winner.
Hi, and welcome to Component Breakdown with me, Jerry. We're going to be taking a look at stocks and bonds. Now, in all fairness to Stocks and Bonds, this is a game that was created in 1964. Okay, so we're talking a game that is currently 50 years old. Now, with all deference to the process of board games, we can establish a pattern. In the 70s, it was Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax, who would eventually branch off into increasingly more role-playing games, and then we'd finally break the shores in the 90s with games like Carcassonne and Settlers of Catan. Which would start the Eurogame revolution, which would bleed over into America in the 2000s. I'm not a board game historian. If you'd like more information on that, Board Games with Scott Nichols is quite keen on the history and very excellent with it. However, we can take a look back in time with the pieces of this game, which is it's absolutely fascinating. It encapsulates a small piece of the market. That's the point of Stocks and Bonds. It takes a look at a market from the 60s, and it breathes that mentality. All of the companies that we see here are little pieces of that history. So we've got a United Auto Company, which reflects a medium to stable growth. It's ironic because if we were to encapsulate that nowadays, if we were to bump that up, we would consider the Ford Motor Company to be quite a risk in terms of stock. So it's actually interesting, the variations. We've got Uranium Enterprises, uranium obviously reflecting the 60s first discovery of starting to use atomic energy. So very interesting. Valley Power and Light. Trans-City Transport, obviously. No Yield. It's a high-risk company, reflecting the unsure nature of the public transportation system at the time in the 60s. Just a fascinating encapsulation. And it is a real working model of an economy within there. We've got pretty much the basis of your modern economy. We've got a simple, I believe, 8 to 10 stocks. So a very, very simplified version. But still, it keeps its own little piece. And what it ends up becoming is a game that's a touch educational at the same time that it's a lot of fun. I mean, sure, it's a lot of fun to place bets on things and to try and discover the market yourself, but it really teaches you as well because you learn how to invest. You learn the purpose of municipal bonds, which would be state and federal bonds nowadays. Or municipal. You learn the safety behind those as opposed to the high risk stocks such as Striker Oil, where you drill. Component-wise, we're not talking super high-quality stuff. I mean, we're working within a 50-year period here. So we're talking, our game's in pretty immaculate shape. If you can find one that's in this good a shape, excellent. It's a harder game to find. Very, very cheap paper, obviously. Everything's made of very cheap paper. The cards are the smallest stock they could find at the time. This record of transactions is actually just a ledger. This is a normal 1960s ledger, what you would find. They just went ahead and put at the bottom, Stocks and Bonds, a 3M bookshelf game. Other than that, same thing. And then over here, the erasable board's actually quite nice. It's an enjoyable part of this. It's a bit small. Ideally, when we play this game, we actually have a large whiteboard that we mark things down on because it makes everything much more apparent. But for small gameplay, that works. And then we've got this little calculator over here which just tells you, and this is a basic slider in and out motion. Nothing in this game is overtly complicated, yet it forms a somewhat intricate picture. It's able to accurately encapsulate a piece of the 1960s economy, and that itself is fascinating. So overall, component-wise, we're not talking huge. If we were to compare this to a modern equivalent of a Fantasy Flight game, it would be it would be a total destruction. It would be negligible. But if we were to take it for its time, I would give this game, if I were reviewing this in the 60s, I probably would have given it quite a good score. The fact that the pieces have lasted 50 years in this condition is actually kind of a credence to them. I mean, everything's still in pretty immaculate shape. So credit to that. But, comparatively to a Fantasy Flight game, we're not talking great components. But for the time period, and for its ability to accurately use its resources, I give this game a great score. So, great work, Stocks and Bonds and 3M. This is Jerry coming to you 50 years from the future saying, thanks.
I'm gonna buy myself some stocks and bonds. Gonna trade away my future like a vagabond. No securities aren't safe for me. Gonna divest and reinvest in my CDs, cause it's a business world. It's a business world. And you know
Good to have you back, buddy.
Good to be back, Jerry.
Turns out that firing you would cost me more in unemployment benefits than keeping you.
Glad to know I'm worth more alive than dead.
Sure like to know what you did with Josh, though.
Oh,
I haven't seen him in about a week.
Don't worry about him. I'm sure he'll pop up later.
Stocks and bonds.
Stocks and bonds.
Stocks and bonds. Stocks and bonds is a good game.
It is.
It's actually one of my only high-rated games. Well, I wouldn't say one of the only. You know, I tend to grade on a much harder scale, so it makes a bit more significant when a game takes 9, like Stocks and Bonds, as far as I'm concerned, 9 out of 10. For 50 years, this game is made in 1964 and 2014. So for 50 years, this game performs just admirably. It creates a little version of the stock market. It's somewhat educational simultaneously as it's fun to do, and it's a real nerd game.
No, yeah, like it makes you feel like a business tycoon more so than any game I can think of.
You know, the game makes you feel. This is one of the few games that we've had where the genuine nerdity comes out in terms of, like, most games are. Even though people think that board games are a touch dorky, I really think that they're more of a. They can be a group experience, and there's a lot of social interaction, and that's one of the reasons we love them. But with Stocks and Bonds,
The first time we ever played, we were enjoying it halfway through the game already, and then we just looked up and looked around and, like, we're legitimately sitting here with a bunch of game pieces, pads of paper, pencils, doing math, calculations, like, alright, if I invest this and do this, and I was like, this is the nerdiest we've ever been in our life.
I have sunk more investment into this game than I have into my real life investment portfolio. Like, it is just. I can't. It's fun, but you do come to the dawning realization. There's not a lot of communication in the game. Instead, a lot of people are number crunching. Like, there's communicating what you're trading, but a lot of times you're just like, all right, so if I do that and on the margin, and it's very economical, and it's a blast.
Like the closest thing you have even to a direct connection against someone else is, oh, he bought this? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll buy this then.
Yeah, you use other
And that's
people
it.
to influence the market trends, but it's very much like trading. You're alone. So it's I enjoy the game though quite a lot because it's a unique dynamic. It's a unique gameplay experience. A lot of games attempt to create a real world or a market. They create a market within where currency isn't exchanged, and that's fantastic. But Stocks and Bonds creates an entire economy, and you have to get behind it. So 9 out of 10 for me.
I give it an 8 out of 10. I do love the game. I do bring it down a little bit, sadly, just due to the lack of player interaction. Does that make me hate the game, though? Obviously not, otherwise I wouldn't give it an 8. But, yeah, fantastic game for what it is. 8 out of 10.
So that is Stocks and Bonds from 3M. And I guess we're stuck with each other.
For the time being,
Certainly seems to be that way.
indeed.
I like the conception that Boardgasm is a business entity that actually makes money